According to statistics, more than 98 million poor rural population have been lifted out of poverty in 832 poverty-stricken counties, and 128,000 villages have been removed from the poverty list. Nationwide, poverty has been addressed, and the task of eradicating extreme poverty has been fulfilled. We have created another miracle that will go down in history.
Well, we can speak to Isabel Hilton, who is the editor of China Dialogue here in London. Isabel, welcome to the program. Of course, it's been year after year, decade after decade, that China has been making huge progress in eradicating poverty. But is this all it seems?
Well, as you say, I think we need to give China and certainly the Chinese people a lot of credit for the development. But of course, this is a long process, and there isn't a moment when poverty is permanently eliminated. Though Xi Jinping wants to claim this because this is a big political moment for him and for the party, for a number of reasons. The NPC, the National People's Congress, and the Chinese People's Consultative Congress open next week. That's the big annual meeting. The 14th five-year plan is about to be unveiled, and in July, the party celebrates its 100th birthday. So Xi Jinping taking personal credit for eliminating poverty and the party taking credit is all part of a kind of a propaganda story that is being heavily promoted at this moment in China. You know, the question of how fragile, how permanent the last and extreme pockets of poverty, how permanent that elimination will be, you know, is pretty open, I think.
What about the imbalances that exist? I mean, they're not just social, they're also environmental as well as economic. And what's the current situation in terms of the haves and have-nots?
Well, of course, that is the other big question, that along with this spectacular growth, there has been an absolutely spectacular widening of the wealth gap. So China has more billionaires than the United States, and even, you know, the Chinese, the National People's Congress has more billionaires than the US Senate. So, you know, you've got a lot of very rich people and you have a lot of very poor people. And that is politically sensitive still, I think, for China. There's also the question of what's going to happen to the people at the bottom of the heap as China upgrades its economy, because, you know, China has gone through this rapid catch-up 2 decades of growth. And in that, characteristically, you take your surplus rural labor and you move it into the cities and incomes start to rise. So China should properly be characterized as a middle-income country at this point. The poverty level for a middle-income country is $5.50, so way above what China is claiming as success. But now that China is going into a slower model of growth and it's trying to restore all the environmental damage that was done, it's got this big transition question of the whole energy system and the whole industrial model because of climate change, amongst other things, but also because, you know, that rapid catch-up growth is over. It's priced itself out of that market. So it's not really clear what the people who have done all those, you know, the jobs at the bottom of the heap, if you like, what will happen to them in the next decades. And they will need a continued investment, frankly, to keep them above the poverty line.
Yeah, I mean, quite clearly, Chinese leadership is not answerable to the people in the way a democratically elected government might be. But considering the divide between rural and urban, and the fact that the majority of Chinese now live in towns and cities, how important is the countryside to the Communist Party?
Well, the countryside is important for food security, but the question of how Chinese agriculture is going to develop now is still, I think, pretty open. You know, a lot of the Chinese countryside isn't really suitable for the kind of mechanization you get in, you know, the Great Plains in the United States or elsewhere where you have big open possibilities. And it's also true that that agricultural productivity hasn't really grown in China. The soil's pretty exhausted. It relies on a very kind of heavy overuse of fertilizer, which is highly problematic in lots of ways. So the countryside is important as an element of productivity, not so much for the people. The people that China will worry about now, that the leadership will worry about, are the middle classes in the cities, the people, whose opinion it has to, keep on side, the people for whom the big propaganda about poverty alleviation has really been produced. And this, it's not just the big speeches, the enormous article in People's Daily, but the party ordered a whole series, for example, of television soap operas on poverty alleviation, which have been broadcast in the past year. So, it's a big political claim, and it's aimed really at the people who have made it. So they've made it into the cities. Their standards have risen, and they will be very keen to maintain that lifestyle.
Isabel, as always, really always appreciate your analysis. Thank you so much indeed, Isabel Hilton.